everyone, and welcome to the second video of our TKT prep course. Well, as you know, my name is Mateus and I'm here to help you with the sequence of videos. So before we start, today we'll be working on Unit 1, which is grammar. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to understand and use key concepts. For instance, what grammar is, part of speech structures, and what grammatical forms are. But, well, before we start, you might be wondering, what is grammar? So, according to Richards, Platt and Platt, 1992, grammar is a description of the structure of a language and the way in which linguistic units, such as words and phrases, are combined to produce sentences in the language. So, before we start, it's also important to know some important features of grammar. For instance, when we talk about grammar, it's important for us to know what parts of speech are, or parts of speech structures. In Portuguese, you could call it as word class, literally translating. However, in English, we call it parts of speech. But, well, what are grammatical forms? These refer to how words are made up and presented in speech or writing. We can identify grammatical forms in parts of speech, grammatical structures, and words that contain affixes. Just to remind you, affixes could be prefixes, which comes before the root of the word, or suffixes, which comes after the root of the word. And what are parts of speech? A part of speech or word class describes how words behave in sentences. This is extremely important for you who are sitting the TKT exam, because in many questions they will be working about and asking you about parts of speech. For instance, they might pick up 3 verbs from a sentence and then you need to identify if it is an auxiliary verb or a main verb or a modal auxiliary verb, which verb is different. So if you know how these words behave in sentences, it will be easier for you to sit the module 1. Well, there are 9 parts of speech in English. They are nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, determiners, prepositions, pronouns, conjunctions, and exclamations. Their form varies according to the function they have in a sentence. So don't be locked to think that, for instance, book, as we might see all the time, I have a book here, let me show it. So book, we can say, oh, book is a noun, but depending on the context, book will be a verb. So you can book a table in a restaurant, for instance, or you can book a reservation somewhere. So it's important for you to know how these words behave in sentences, not only the fixed word by itself, but in a context. Okay? So, moving on, let's understand a little bit and test your knowledge about parts of speech. So, categorize the part of speech to its function. So here, I would like you to think about it. You can pause the video while I ask you the question. So the first one is nouns, right? The first category would be noun or nouns. So what do you think of it? How does it behave in a sentence? To show an action, state, or experience? To describe or give more information about a noun, pronoun, or part of a sentence? Or to name people, things, qualities, ideas, or activity to act as the subject or object of the verb? Now you can pause the video and think a little bit about it and choose an option. Alright, so if you thought that it was to show an action, state your experience, unfortunately, no. And also, it's not used to describe or give information about a noun, pronoun, or part of a sentence. Nouns, when we talk about nouns, you can think of names. Every name's a noun. If you stop to think, you can look at your living room, you can look for anything, you won't find something that will not have a name, right? So noun is the own name. So nouns are used to name people, things, qualities, ideas, or activities to act as the subject or object of the verb. Okay, you got this question right. Here I have some categories of nouns. For instance, proper nouns. These are used to refer to people and places. For instance, George is in London. So George and London would be proper nouns, although George is the subject, whereas London is the object of the sentence. Okay? Russia is huge, so Russia, right, would be a proper noun. The European Union has lots of members, so European Union. We also have mass nouns or uncountable nouns, as we are used to see, and these refer to things which do not have a plural form. For instance, milk is expensive here. Sugar is bad for me. So you cannot say milks. You cannot say sugars. They are mass nouns. So these are used to talk about liquids, masses, and so on and so forth, though they do not have a plural form. Count nouns or countable nouns, as we are used to see in many grammar books, they refer to things we can have in the plural, and most nouns are in this group. So for instance, I have a pencil and 2 pens. So you can count, as the name says by itself, right? They are countable nouns. Well, moving on, let's take a look at our second part of speech. So the first one was noun. Now we move on to verbs. So, what are verbs? How do they behave in a sentence? To show an action, state, or experience. To describe or give more information about a noun, pronoun, or part of a sentence. Or to name people, things, qualities, ideas, or activities. You can pause the video now and try to answer. Alright, good work. So, as you have seen, the third one is impossible because this one we had used it for nouns, right? So verbs. When we talk about verbs, you must think of actions. Yeah, exactly. So the verbs are the on action. So they represent an action, state, or experience. Okay? There are some categories that I'd like to talk about. For instance, we have action verbs. So they can talk about behavior or feelings, and they carry meaning even if alone. So, for instance, if I say kick the ball, if you think about only the word kick is an action, right? So it's important to remember that there are these two categories of verbs, action and non-action verbs, right? So action verbs, these are lexical or main verbs which carry meaning even if alone, as I had said. The second category would be describing states and thinking which carry meaning even if alone. So these are also lexical verbs or main verbs, and they carry meaning even if alone. But remember, in this case, I'm not referring and talking about action verbs. These would be non-action verbs because they talk about states and thinking. So they do not have a continuous form. So I can't say I'm loving somebody. I fall in love, but I'm not loving, you know? So in this case, I enjoy walking, I hope she's here. These verbs do not have a continuous form, okay? We also have linking or copular verbs. They are used to join nouns to nouns and nouns to adjectives and show the connection between things. For instance, I am in London. If I say I in London, we know that something's missing. So these linking verbs or copular verbs are used to this, okay? For instance, she became the manager. The car looks wonderful. So these verbs link noun to nouns or nouns to adjectives, okay? Then we also have two categories of auxiliary verbs. We have primary auxiliary verbs, and they make tenses with other verbs. For instance, if we talk about the present continuous or even the present perfect, we have as an auxiliary verb the verb to be for the present continuous and the verb to have for the present perfect. So I can say, I have broken the glass, or she's working Berlin, okay? And as you also must know, modal auxiliary verbs show how you feel about other verbs. So when we talk about modal verbs, you can think about will, can, must, should, ought to, might, may, and so on and so forth. Okay, So just remember and to draw your attention that after these verbs, the next verb must not come with to. So I can't say I can to come at 6, but I can come at 6. Okay? All right. So let's take a look at our third part of speech. So the first one was noun, then verb, and now we have adjectives. So we saw that to show an action, state, or experience, we use a verb, right? This is the definition of a verb. And to name people, things, qualities, or ideas would be the nouns. So adjectives describe or give more information about a noun, pronoun, or part of a sentence. It's important to remember that adjectives usually come before a noun or after a copular verb. Okay, so I can say the sky is blue. So blue is giving the characteristic. It's given more information about the sky. Or if I say the yellow girl, I don't know, anyway. So yellow is given a feature of the next noun. Okay, because remember, in English, the nouns always come at the end of the sentence. All right. And here we have our fourth part of speech, which would be adverbs. So looking at the options, think about it. What are adverbs? How do they behave in a sentence? To say more about how, when, where, etc., something happens by adding information to adjectives, verbs, other adverbs, or sentences. To describe or give more information about a noun, pronoun, or part of a sentence. Or to make clear which noun is referred to. What do you think? You can pause the video. Alright, if you thought of letter A, you are correct. Adverbs are used to add more information. I usually say that adverbs are like the adjectives for adjectives. So they add information to adjectives, verbs, or even other adverbs. There are 5 types of them, so all of them can answer different questions. For instance, how? We have adverbs of manners. So he drove quickly, he walked slowly, he spoke happily. So these verbs who talks about the manner, the way that something was done, they give a feature to the verb. That's how an adverb happens, okay, how it works and behaves in a sentence. To the question when, we have adverbs of time. For instance, if I say I will arrive soon, or she left early, I'm flying tomorrow, soon, early, and tomorrow, they express time. So these adverbs are used for that. Okay, when I will be arriving, when she left, so they are giving feature to the verb. For where, we have adverbs of places. For instance, sit here. So here is where you're going to sit. So in this case, it's the feature of the verb one more time. You can see, please smoke outside. Okay. For how often, we have adverbs of frequency. So if I say she often works at home, so I'm giving the feature of how often does she do it. Okay. They frequently take a holiday. So in this case, frequently says the frequency that she goes on that they go on holiday. Okay. And as for the question how much, we have adverbs of degree. So I can say I like it a lot. So I'm saying the way I like something. Or they really enjoy their food. So really is emphasizing how they enjoy their food. So as I had mentioned, adjectives give feature to nouns and adverbs give feature to adjectives, verbs, or other adverbs. All right, I hope it's clear. So, oops, I left some effects. Just remember that, as I had mentioned, some adverbs also modify adjectives. So I can say she was very happy. So I'm emphasizing giving feature of how happy she was. And they also modify other adverbs. So I can say she drove very quickly. Not only did she drove quickly, but very quickly. Okay? So it's changing the way that something happens. All right. So our fifth category, determiners. So what do you think? Where are they used? How do they behave in a sentence? To make clear which noun is referred to show the relationship between a noun phrase or pronoun, and another word or phrase, to replace or refer a noun or noun phrase mentioned earlier or about to be mentioned. What do you think? You can pause the video. Alright, so if you thought that they are used to make clear which noun is referred to, you are correct. Really good. So these words, they usually change how we see a noun. Okay, so determiners always come in front of the noun, and there are 5 sorts of them. Articles, so a, an, and the, because they are used to determine or undetermine a noun. Demonstrative pronouns such as this, that, these, and those are also considered determiners. WH words, so when we want to make questions. Also, possessive pronouns or adjective possessive pronouns, they are also used and considered as determiners. And quantifiers such as some, many, a few, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. So the next one would be prepositions. So what do you think? Look at the examples, look at the sentences, the options, and tell me. We saw that to make clear which noun is referred to is a determiner. To show the relationship between a noun phrase, or pronoun and another word or phrase, or to name people, things, qualities. Alright, if your answer was B, you were correct. Prepositions link words or pronouns, and many people, and even teachers from time to time, they confuse the difference between prepositions and conjunctions. Well, remember, conjunctions join sentences, they join clauses, so they behave different in a sentence. Prepositions just show this relationship between a noun phrase or pronoun and another word or phrase, okay? Whereas conjunctions link clauses, prepositions link words, okay? And what about pronouns? Well, as I said, to join words, sentences, or parts of sentences, it couldn't be pronouns, right? So what are pronouns? How do they behave in a sentence? To replace or refer to a noun or noun phrase mentioned earlier or about to be mentioned, or to show a feeling, especially in informal spoken language. You can pause the video and think a little bit about it. Well, if your answer is B, you are correct. Pronouns are used to refer to a noun or noun phrase, okay? They might be used to avoid repetition, as we usually do. So instead of saying Sarah went out yesterday, Sarah, so we do not repeat Sarah. We use she, for instance. Yep. Right. And what about conjunctions? I spoiled you the answer. You can pause the video, take a look at the 3 options. Alright, if your choice was letter A, you are correct. As I had mentioned, they are used to join words, sentences, or parts of sentences. So they are used to join ideas together, and there are 3 sorts of them. Joining or coordinating, because they join 2 equal ideas. For example, he went to the supermarket and he bought a new hat. So and is adding information. Not only did he go to the supermarket, but he also bought a new hat. I telephoned, but nobody answered. So in this case, but gives a constructive idea of what was mentioned before. Okay, so we have 2 independent clauses. The second category is making one idea depend on another, or subordinating. I can say I came because he asked me. So if I just say I came, why did you came? Why did you come? So because, to give the reason, okay? She will come if she has time. So she will come if she has time. So we use this conditional conjunction, okay? Or we also have a double conjunctions. They put two ideas together. For instance, both Joe and Mary came. Whether he comes or not is important. Okay? And the last one, we have exclamations. So, as we had already seen, to join words, sentences, or part of sentences, we have exactly conjunctions. To replace or refer to a noun, we have exactly nouns. So exclamations are used to show a feeling, especially in informal spoken language. For example, when we say wow, right? Okay, everybody, really good work. So just for us to take a look at some subcategories. For nouns, we have countable nouns, uncountable nouns, proper, common, abstract, and collective. Okay, so just remember that abstract pronouns, we talk about things that are intangible. Okay, so if we talk about love, we can see love, but we feel, so it's something more abstract. Okay, it's not concrete. I didn't put concrete nouns here, sorry. As for verbs, we have transitive, intransitive, regular, irregular, participles, gerunds, infinitives, modals, multi-word verbs, phrasal verbs, tenses, active voice, passive voice, imperative, and so on and so forth. Adjectives, the most common part of adjectives that we talk about are the degrees of it, so comparative and superlative. Adverbs, as I had shown you, we have adverbs of degree, manner, time, focus, frequency, quantity, attitude markers. Okay? And for determiners, possessive adjectives, articles, demonstrative adjectives, quantifiers. Okay? Prepositions, as you might know, there are loads of them. Time, place, direction, contrast, exemplification, exception, cause and effect, dependent. Okay? For some pronouns, we have personal pronouns, possessive pronouns, relative pronouns, reflexive pronouns. Okay. Conjunctions, there are loads of conjunctions. We can use conjunctions for a given reason, addition, contrast, time, condition, purpose, or result. Exclamations, feeling of doubt or pain. And these are the some subcategories. Sorry for the load of information, but I'd like to go thoroughly with you in this context. Okay, so, and then we have grammatical forms and grammatical structure. So when we talk about grammatical forms, we're talking about those ways that we have, those subcategories that we have in verbs, for instance, past continuous. So for the past continuous, we have a structure, right? And then we have its form. For instance, the subject plus past tense of verb be plus ing. Okay, so for instance, I can say he was running. So he as the subject, was is the past tense of verb be, and running is the main verb with ing. We also have the passive voice, subject plus be plus past participle. We can have some structures for comparative of long adjectives. There are also different ones as for short adjectives, as you might know. Prepositional phrases, so for instance, we can use a preposition plus an article or determiner plus a noun, as we have in for an hour. And contrast clauses, these are a few examples, okay? I wouldn't like to go even further, otherwise this video would last, I don't know, 2 hours. So, subordinate conjunctions of contrast plus finite clause, and so on and so forth, okay? But just for you to understand, grammatical uses of sentences refer to how grammatical structures are used to convey meaning. So when I say she's doing her homework, I can have many ideas about it. For instance, we know that this is a sentence in the present continuous, and the present continuous may be used to talk about something that is happening now. She's doing her homework at the moment. But I can also use it to talk about something that is happening in the present, but not necessarily now. Okay, for instance, if I say I'm taking a course, all right, but it's not necessarily now at this moment, right? And as you might also know, we can use the present continuous to talk about future arrangements. So I can say she's doing her homework tomorrow. It's an appointment. She's doing her homework tomorrow with me. So it's something that is already scheduled. She called me, everything's set, so it's an arrangement. Okay? Well, and many grammatical forms have more than one use. If we stop to think about the present simple, for instance, we can use it to describe a present state, to describe actions or situations which happen repeatedly, but which might not be happening at the moment, to refer to the future in a scheduled timetable, to tell a story, and to provide a commentary. So if we stop to see, we have some uses of it. It's not only to describe a present state or to talk about a routine or habits, you see? So I highly recommend you to take a look at some grammars in order to understand all of its uses, okay? The present perfect as well, so we can use it to describe past actions which have some connection to the present. For instance, oh, I've seen that film. To describe an event or situation which is part of one's life experience, or to describe a temporary state or action that started in the past and is still continuous. Okay, in this case it's a present perfect continuous, right? But I believe you got the hang of it. As for adverbs, to describe how something is done, to focus on something, or to show an attitude to something. For instance, they can't come, unfortunately. So I'm showing my attitude. So it's important for you when answering TKT questions to take a look in the semantical part of it. So how the word is acting in a sentence, not only in the word by itself, but in a sentence. Well, something to bear in mind when we talk about teaching grammar. Grammar rules traditionally describe written language rather than spoken language. Very often, speakers of a language can speak and write it well without consciously knowing any grammatical rules or terms. Teachers need to consider whether it is helpful to teach grammar to learners simply by making them aware of patterns and practicing them, or by also teaching them grammar rules and some grammatical terms. Please be aware with it. Just learning grammatical rules, terms, and structures doesn't teach learners how to communicate, which is the main purpose of language. So rather than trying to teach, oh, today we will be learning the present continuous or the past simple, but put it in a context so students can see how can they use it, not only decorating this rote learning of grammar, okay? It's important that exercises and activities focus on form and use to give students both practice, okay? And grammar rules describe the way that language works, but language changes over time, so grammar rules are not fixed, they change too. That's something important to bear in mind. So for us to wrap up, okay, due to our time, at least my time, well, I prepared 2 mock questions for you. So for questions 1 to 7, look at the sentences and the 3 words from each listed, A, B, or C. 2 of the words have the same grammatical function in the sentence, 1 does not. So please remember, pay attention with it, because the day of the exam you will not be marking the one which is acting properly, but the one that's different. This might happen in the test as well. So choose the letter A, B, or C which does not have the same grammatical function. For instance, if we take a look at number 1, we have, she told us it was very cold there. So we have here she, it, there. So think about it. She here, what part of speech does she belong? Yeah, if you thought it was a pronoun, you were right. What about it? Exactly, it's a pronoun as well. And there. There is a preposition of place. So the one which is different is there, right? Good. Let's take a look at number 2. It was built when they were young, so they don't remember the old building. So here we have was, were, and don't. Okay, so it was built. So in this case, it's a verb. Like all of them are verbs, And bear in mind that here was, it was built. It's an auxiliary verb that is forming a passive voice. When they were young. So were here, is it an auxiliary verb? No, right? This is linking, it's a linking verb. In this case, it's linking the subject to the adjective. So they don't remember the old building, so they don't remember. Don't here is acting as an auxiliary verb as well. So here we have two auxiliary verbs and a copular verb. So in this case, letter B. Number 3. Nobody understood his spoken French because his accent was so strong. So nobody understood his spoken French because his accent, spoken French because his accent was so strong. So in this case we have understood, spoken, and was. Nobody understood, so it's a simple past here. You can pause the video and try to answer the questions, okay? Because I'll just speak away. I can't interact with you, everybody, sorry. And spoken, his spoken French. Here, it is a participle form, right? Because his accent was so strong. So we have here was not acting as a linking verb, but rather the past tense. So in this case, spoken, letter B again. Question 4. He studied IT for his job, but he made very slow progress, so he gave up. So here, it's important for you to focus on something that we had mentioned before. For instance, for is a preposition, but and so are conjunctions. So in this case, for is different, okay? 5. They took off their coats and went to the table near the window. So here we have off, to, near. So here, if you take a look at these words in isolation, all of them are prepositions, but here I have here, they took off. This is a phrasal verb. This is a phrasal verb, so it does not fit. Okay? 6. She found it really hard to concentrate as it was noisy there. So she found it really hard to concentrate as it was so noisy there. So we have an adverb, a quantifier acting as an adverb, which is giving feature to the adjective noisy. And the last one, the young cat ran too fast and for the dog to catch it easily. So we have young, which is an adjective, fast, and easily. If you take a look at these words in isolation, you can try to mark letter C, but take a look at it. Easily is an adverb, right? But here we have fast can be both an adjective or an adverb. So when I say that the cat ran too fast, I'm talking about the way that the cat ran. So in this case, it's letter A. Alright? So everyone, thank you very much for today. I hope you have enjoyed the video. In our next lesson, we'll be talking about flexes. Please take a look at these sentences. You can pause the video now and try to answer them. I will leave the answer key here in the comments. So thank you very much for today, and I hope you liked it. Bye bye. See you next week.